Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since the last video. I'm currently traveling abroad on vacation in Dallas, Texas, which means I got to catch the first and last LTA finals because the LCS and CBLOL brands are returning for 2026. It's been a busy last week or so in the League of Legends esports space, with all of the Tier 1 regions concluding their competitive years, crowning their champions, and locking in their seedings at Worlds. We also got final details on the Worlds format locked in for this year as well, and the biggest bit of news, that the Los Ratones will potentially be competing in the LEC in 2026 for winter. It's been a headliner kind of week, so without further ado, let's get into it. First, the LCS and CBLOL have returned. After a year of the LTA North and South conferences existing, the call has been made by Riot to revert to the iconic brands. It was announced last week at the LTA Championship in Allen, Texas, where Mark Z, the commish himself, broke the news. This has come after a year of negative feedback all around, from fans to teams and especially from the CBLOL side, who, to be frank, ended up getting the shore end of the stick this year, having to fight it out for scraps of representation internationally. Most importantly though, the viewership numbers tanked immensely hard, and I mean, if the feedback wasn't doing the talking, the numbers certainly were, because just take a look at them, they kinda speak for themselves. Thanks Monte Cristo for posting those. It does in some ways though pose a few questions, some of them certainly having simple answers. The first, I suppose, is where did this merger go wrong and how did we end up here after only 1 year? While there are certainly multiple angles to attack this from, I think the main and straightforward way was certainly the format split to split. Having spent a fair amount of time this year with Al Dominate, who was of course on C9's coaching staff on the Power Spike podcast, I've heard firsthand how even for teams it sucked a lot of hype and build up out of the matches as games were so far and few between for teams at times individually. In Split 1 as an example, which started on the 25th of January, there was a chance you could play just 4 games by February 1st and see no stage games until April. There are also far too many points where teams would go usually a fortnight without playing stage games, and with funky formats like the positioning phase in Split 2 and the pick and play system in Split 3, we had best of ones in the holy year of Fearless, and top teams not really facing each other in Split 3 until playoffs as well. One of the other main selling points to this merger was inter-regional play, but with both leagues operating on different continents among other logistical challenges that this year's competitive schedule provided, I'm sure, there was only 2 times that we saw the LTA North and South teams face off. Once at the start of the year to qualify for first stand, where the loser would be denied attendance at the event, and another in September, the one that just passed, the LTA Championship, to qualify for Worlds. I don't think I really have to go into detail here. We had a grand total of 6 best of 3s and 7 best of 5s in the span of 9 months between LTA South and North. The most important thing of all this though, frankly, is that it removed the iconic branding of both the LCS and CBLOL in favour of a completely new and not recognisable one. I think the even funnier thing here is that, at least from the LTA North side of things, branding wise, nothing really changed besides the logo. Even the theme song of the league still used close to the same theme for the year. The LCS branding alone was carrying a lot of the weight when it came to the recognisability of the region. Hell, when franchising began in 2019, there was a legitimate beef about Europe having to drop the EU LCS name for the LEC, so I can only imagine what was going on in the CBLOL discourse. Streaming on my own Twitch channel alone, which is very small mind you, I can't tell you how many times I had someone come in and ask me what the LTA even was, so yeah, imagine on the broader scale, and again, those viewership numbers, they don't really lie, they speak for themselves. I think it's good that they've recognised what they've lost here and reversed the decision, even though realistically it shouldn't have happened in the first place, and the damage could potentially even be irreversible. I'd love to know what you think. If you're an LTA fan this year, how you feel about the rebrand back, especially if you're from the South. I just want to hear your thoughts. Moving on to Worlds for a moment before the biggest news of the week, we got a detailed final look at the tournament, its schedule, and the format this year, and while there aren't too many large changes here, I wanted to point out the impactful ones and why I feel they're important to be highlighted. Firstly, and we've known about this for some time now, but play-ins. Coming into Worlds 2025, play-ins will be 1 singular day and 1 best of 5 this year between the LCK and LPL 4th seeds. These seeds were earned from MSI performances where Gen G claimed their auto-qualified spot and the LPL, being the second best placed region, earned theirs. The problem, however, is that we've significantly cut down the length of the tournament by doing so, and have also cut down the total amount of teams at the tournament, and again, this is information we've had for a while, but I wanted to use the time now to highlight how over the last few years we've had less and less teams attending the tournament. From 2017 and the introduction of the play-in stage to 2022, there were 24 teams that qualified to Worlds. In 2023, with the introduction of the Swiss format, we moved to 22 teams. Last year to 20 teams, and this year to just 17. I feel as though Riot have lucked out this year, with the 4th seeds being T1 and IG, who unarguably have the largest fan support on both sides from their regions, as to a point it distracts from the reduction in the teams attending. Whilst I'm not trying to spoil the fun of getting a matchup like this so early in the tournament, it still feels weird that realistically both of these teams could take the places of a lot of teams in Swiss right now and likely draw better results, but they have to play one single best of 5 to get that when they could have qualified into Swiss already, and we have a play-in section of Worlds where maybe the 3rd and 4th seeds from LTA, LEC and this year APAC battle it out for the final spots like normal. To me, it feels like another way to cut costs on running the event, which has definitely been the trend in many areas in esports, and they kinda just lucked out with it being T1 versus IG, so the hype of that matchup makes up for it. But I'd love to know what you think on that point. With that though, Worlds is going to be just 26 days long, as play-ins is one dedicated day and the schedule for knockouts has been condensed greatly, and that part is fantastic and something fans have requested for a while. As you can see here, quarters and semis will all be happening within 1 week, starting October 28th through Sunday, November 2nd. Usually, with last year as a comparison, you have around a 5 to 7 day break between each stage. 2024's quarters started on the 17th of October and semis concluded on the 27th. The 1 week break between semis and finals, however, is still present, though this does make sense as finals will be happening in Chengdu, so teams and the broadcast production will need to have time to travel from Shanghai, set up, get rehearsals and practice in, and of course, produce media. The one thing I have to say here is that while I'm happy we're cutting down the dead time between quarters and semis, I'm still in the camp that World's top 8 should be double elimination bracket. I've always thought it was to a point about the logistics of doing it, though it's clear at the very least they're willing to run multiple days across the course of the back end of the tournament, as well as even run double best of 5s like they have done for the last few MSIs if they have to. I certainly feel like they're missing out on simply marketing their game more at the peak of the interest for the year, but as always, I'd love to hear what you think of the schedule and this year about the play-ins change. Lastly, the freshest news of the lot, and it's that the Los Ratones are coming to the LEC. Kind of. Now it's important to note that everything mentioned here is still technically speculative and has not been confirmed by Riot officially as of now, though all signs point to it being true. LR, alongside the winner of the 2025 Summer EMEA Masters, will join all 10 LEC teams in a new kickoff tournament. Details still remain sparse, as this is something I would expect Riot to announce either during or shortly after Worlds, although this news could prompt them to release details a little bit sooner. As an example, it's unclear what would happen if an academy team participating in EMEA Masters were to win the tournament, as that would immediately be a conflict of interest. There were many reactions to this news breaking, however. Many happy that seemingly we were going to have LR playing in, or at least versus LEC teams in a tournament setting, whilst many in other camps were upset about, at least on the surface, what can very easily be perceived as favoritism on Riot's part. With the introduction of franchising in 2019, the LEC has required you buy into a slot. It's effectively a massive investment for getting in, and it's only grown since franchising has began. Initially, these slots were valued between 8 to 10 million euros, though since then those figures have ballooned massively. Team BDS bought in for 26.5 million in 2021. In the 22 off-season, Team Heretics' buy-in was reportedly north of 30 million, and KC's buy-in in 2024 was seemingly in the same price range, with MKOI's dealings on their merger not being public, though the cost of the merger alone was still fairly steep in its own right. Naturally, this has generated a lot of pushback from teams and fans who say it's unfair that seemingly LR right now are getting into the LEC seemingly for free, whilst their teams had to cough up gargantuan sums of money to do the same. Granted, however, the Los Ratones aren't in the LEC right now, and it's important to bottom line that. This tournament, by the details that we have right now, is simply an invitational for winter and winter only. K-Draw and the LR brand's number pool are undeniably massive, and given the declining viewership in the core broadcast, it makes sense they'd want to get LR into the fold ASAP, though doing so in this way without them having to buy out a slot or merge with another organisation could certainly leave a sour taste in some of those previously mentioned orgs' mouths, especially when it seems like a lot of upper management, including up to owners of the LEC organisations, were potentially not even on board with this idea to begin with. Again, it's important to note, whilst full details remain unclear, per Sheep Esports' report on this, the idea of having ERL teams compete directly with LEC teams for World qualification was also discussed, but declined by LEC organisations who argued it would devalue their guaranteed spots. Think what you want about franchising, I for one am firmly against it, but based on the reactions of team owners such as Ibai and Kometo, it's kind of seeming like team owners weren't even on board with this version of Winner Split, with LR in, and if Riot have gone over teams to make this decision, which I suppose they are within their rights to do, they are heavily damaging relations and spitting on the deal of the franchise by going against the wishes of the teams. I'm sure time will clear up a lot of the mystery here, but it certainly is a lot to unpack. There are also calls to put an end to franchising in general too, admittedly including from myself, as it seemed from the last few years, whilst there are factors at play like the pandemic coming to an end, which has seen widespread decreases in interest in many gaming spaces, and the rise of popularity in co-streaming, that the LEC as a product has kind of failed to increase its year-on-year numbers. Now again, whilst it's difficult to say where numbers would be if co-streamers weren't in the equation, the LEC's main broadcast numbers have been trending down quite aggressively, and it's definitely very concerning for all parties. And a key concern has been that teams have sort of existed or floated through multiple years in the league without really having an impact on any front, be it the Rift or social media. Teams like SK and until very recently Rogue before the Na'Vi acquisition have been culprits of doing just that, and people have rightfully pointed out that if franchising wasn't a thing, these teams likely would have been cycled out sooner for teams like KC or MKOI who have come in and won split titles since their introduction. With all this said and done, however, it is clear that Riot wanted LR involved with the LEC in some capacity this year, and going by the vibes of LR in the last few months, it's been apparent that both Cadril and the team didn't really have much interest in staying in the ERLs for a full extra year. While the likelihood is they'll have to participate in the NLC in some capacity next year, the move up to the LEC seems ever more likely and continues to look more of a when instead of an if. Drama aside, I am still curious to see how this tournament plays out. From a competitive standpoint, having followed the esports space closely for some time now, the skill floor of the weakest LEC teams has looked rough lately, and there's no doubt in my mind that a team like LR or any of the other strong ERL teams that get produced out of the system could take down some of these lower end LEC teams. That's it for today's video though. Let me know about everything we covered here today, from the LTA rebrand to the LR in LEC news. I want to hear your thoughts on what you'd like to see happen out of these things, potentially in the case of LR, happen. Be sure to check out the short form content coming out again on the channel, as we're ramping back up to regularly scheduled videos once more. Feel free to join the Discord linked in the description below, and follow the rest of the social links to stay up to date with everything going on with myself and the channels, and I'll see you soon for more discussions about ongoing things in the space. Bye!